Hey babe, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I am super tired today, but we will talk about why I'm super tired today on next week's episode of our podcast. Are you tired?
I'm a little sleepy, but I had a good little power nap while ago, so it's been the perfect Saturday.
Yes, it has. So before we get to talking about what we're talking about today, we're talking about our time in the ministry right after we got married, right? So
Well, and after we got engaged, because remember?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So before we do that, you had something you want to talk to me about?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, I've been thinking about this. It's been heavy on my mind.
Uh-oh.
If you could be any animal in the world, what animal would you be and why?
I don't know. Part of me would want to be like it depends. Part of me would want to be like a puppy dog or something because I could get all the loving if I was part of a family who would love me. But if I was a puppy dog where they change you out to a fence outside, I would not like that.
Yeah.
But that would go for any animal. I would also like to be a tiger or a lion where I could like rule the jungle. But then I would end up in like the Jackson Zoo or something. So, I don't know. A tiger or a puppy?
So random.
What about you?
I would want to be a Highland cow.
Oh,
Those
yeah, I knew that
things
was coming.
are so freaking pretty. We've been hanging out with some Highland cows yesterday and today, and I am smitten. I am absolutely in love with them.
I can see that. How soft are they, do you know?
I haven't been able to. You're a jerk. I pet every animal on the darn farm, but I haven't been able to get close to. I did get close to one of them, but as soon as I stuck my hand out to pet her, she got spooked and left. But it's gonna happen when we get back. I'm gonna try again, and then the morning before we leave, if I have to get up early and go out there, I'm gonna pet a cow before we leave. And then I find out, we traveled all this way to come stay on this farm, which has been amazing. But I was messaging my son about it yesterday. He goes, "Oh yeah, Mom, we have a place just a few minutes down the road from us where you can get in a car and drive around and go pet the Highland cows." And I'm like, why is my son just now telling me this? So next time we go visit Caleb and Delaney, I'm going to have to find that place and we're going to have to go.
Yes, indeed. Well, so there's your answer. So I guess we will get into our ministry days right after we were engaged.
Welcome to Loving Our 25 to Life. I'm Heather.
And I'm Bo. Together we've been married over 25 years.
Yeah, baby!
And this is where we talk about life, love, and all the adventures we have had along the way.
Oh, wow. Whether we're sharing stories from our marriage or taking you along one of our trips, we're here to reflect on how we've made it this far and where we are headed next.
So grab a seat, settle in, and let's dive into another episode of Loving Our 25 to Life. Okay, so in this episode, we were going to talk about, right after we became engaged, you started the ministry first, and then I was shortly after. But let's talk about how we even got to the point where, because I'm sure right now if somebody that knows me today knew that I was in the ministry, they would probably be like, what ministry and how? But let's talk about, you talk about how you got in there and kind of some of your stuff, and then I'll talk about how and why I got in the ministry after that.
It was my junior year at William Carey, and I had done the summer mission thing over the summer in 96.
Mm-hmm.
And so toward the end of 96, where we went to school, our religion building, because I got my bachelor's at William Carey in psychology and religion. So we had a religion building, and of course they always had things posted for jobs, youth minister jobs around. And I think I had a friend or something, his name was Dale, and he went to Midway Baptist Church in Meridian, Mississippi, and he was telling me that they were looking for a youth minister. And I said, well, if you know anything about the Baptist culture, it's women are just, they really aren't supposed to, or it's frowned upon that they teach any male older than children's age. So I was like, I don't know that this church would hire me to be a youth minister. But I was kind of looking more for a children's minister job. But he's like, no, you should apply. My dad's on the committee. And I'd already met his dad, I think, somehow. I don't know. But anyway, so I was like, okay. So I applied, and they called me, went in for an interview, and absolutely fell in love with the people. Like, I remember Nancy Nicholas was in there. Love her. Still love her.
All those people.
And then they had either just gotten or they were getting a new pastor. His name was Keith Grubbs. And I really just liked him a lot, and his wife, super sweet. And I don't know, I mean, one thing led to another, and I got the job, and I did. So Hattiesburg is where I was going to school. Meridian is where this church was. So the church was an hour and a half away from where I was going to school. So the agreement was I would only do Sundays and Wednesdays. And so I would usually come down to the church on Saturday, and they had this like program set up where some of the families in the church would sign up to let me spend the night with them on Saturday night so I could get up and go to church on Sunday. And that was a lot of fun, just kind of getting to live life with some of the people in the church. And you remember Ken and Janet?
I stayed with them many, many times.
They were so fun to stay with. And then there was Patty and James, and of course Nancy and Dale. So had so much fun getting to know them. And then Bo started coming with me, and then somehow we kind of fell into, every time we went, Bo stayed with Ken and Janet, and then I would stay with different people. And then somehow we ended up always pretty much staying, one of us, with Denise Harrison.
Mm-hmm. You stayed with them mostly, and I stayed with Ken and Janet a lot. And one of my most cringeworthy stories that I have involves Ken and Janet. So I would stay there most Saturday nights. So pretty much every week I would come with you on Saturday and stay and go to your church on Sunday. And I remember one time I stayed there and I left. And when I came back the next week, I stayed in this upper room that they had, and it had a bathroom and everything. I went into the bathroom the second week that I was there, and a pair of my underwear was laying on the floor in their bathroom. So either they didn't come up there to, check it out, which would be fine with me, or they did, and they saw my underwear laying there, and they just left it there the whole week. Either way, they never said anything to me about it, but I still to this day think about that and cringe.
But we had a lot of fun, and so Bo would come, and he would come hang out, and we would go on youth trips with these kids. And it's funny looking back now, because at the time I was only 20, maybe 20 or 21. Mm-hmm. My oldest youth was 17 or 18, but of course, I never told them how young I was. But it wasn't until years later that some of them really realized and put together the fact that I was only just a few years older than them. But we would take them to like Six Flags, and we went to Gatlinburg on a trip one time. And of course, this is in Mississippi. So to go from Mississippi to Gatlinburg, it was quite the trip. And then you got in there and realized how fun it was, and you just felt like God was calling you to do the same thing. Not
just because it was fun, but I'd had some youth ministers when I was a youth that really
changed your life,
changed my life, and helped me through some stuff. And
well, and before we move on to your part of it, there were some guys that went to Midway, and I don't remember how old they were when we started. I think one of them was in 7th grade, maybe the other one was in 9th or 10th, and they came from like not really a church background, and they weren't. 2 of them were related, but the other 2 weren't. So there's 4 total. One of the guys, he was so quiet, like. I don't remember exactly his home situation. I did end up later getting to know his mom pretty well, and I really liked her a lot, but I don't remember his home situation, or I don't know if his dad wasn't in the picture, or if he just didn't talk about his dad a lot or whatever. But this kid was so quiet. Like, he would come and he would listen, but he would, occasionally I would be like, hey, is it okay if I ask you to pray, close us out in prayer? And he would be like, no, I don't feel comfortable, whatever. And so I was at that church for 18 months. He actually ended up getting saved and getting baptized. And now today he is a preacher at a new but growing church in Mississippi. And his wife and I are still friends on Facebook. She was also in our youth group. And it's just so cool when she posts stuff or tags us in stuff where Matthew's doing the preaching. And I just sit there and look at it and I'm like, that kid wouldn't even talk during youth group. He wouldn't answer questions. He just was so quiet. But I think
I came along. I was going to say, kicking his butt at ping pong.
When Bo started coming with us all the time, he and Bo really started hanging out and bonded and getting to be good friends. And I just really think that that's awesome, the way that God has allowed us to watch how he and Brandy have grown. And then there's Eric and Hank, who the campfire story so occasionally Bo would take my kids, in my youth group, the guys over to do something while I was taking the girls to have a girls' night out or whatever. And so
usually it was pretty sketchy stuff.
So one night, you got to tell that story about when y'all all went camping.
One night, me and Hank and Eric and Eric's brother Jason. All four of us, and I think that was it. I don't think Matthew was with us or anybody else, but we went camping it was one of their dads. I think it might have been dad or uncle or something. It was his trailer in the woods that they use when they go like deer hunting and stuff. But we had tents, so we were sleeping in tents outside, and we had we built a bonfire, and we looked in the cabinets of this trailer, and whoever was there before us had left like cans of corn and cans of like pork and beans and stuff. So we had the bright idea to put one of the cans of corn, I think it was, in the fire that we had. So we put it in the fire, and it was an unopened can, so like it was just heating up and just boiling on the inside. And when it exploded, the logs of the fire went like 30 feet in the air, and we ran and hid behind my truck, and like logs were landing on the other side of the truck. So we decided if corn would do that, like pork and beans surely would be better. So we pick up all these logs, put them back on the fire, get the fire going again, put the pork and beans in there, and that explosion, it was like 10 times what the corn was. And so we still, I'm 50 years old now. That was when I was 20. And these guys are probably, mid-40s? And we still, every time I talk to them on Facebook or whatever, we talk about that time.
So meanwhile, I'm over with the girls, and we're like having actual Bible study and learning about the Lord, and, trying to get in our feelings and figure out, what this whole life is all about. And the guys are over there blowing up cans with bonfires.
We were praying we didn't get hurt or hurt anybody or whatever.
But anyway, so that's what started it. And then Bo found a job not too far from that church. And he became a youth minister there. It was a tiny church. And so when we got married, we knew that, both of those churches were close. Well, my church was in Meridian. His church was close to Meridian. But when we got married, we knew that we wanted to go back and live in Jackson. And part of that was because during that time, during my senior year of college, my dad had gotten diagnosed with cancer. And so we wanted to move back to Jackson to kind of be closer to our families. We also knew that being married, we didn't feel comfortable with each of us being youth ministers at separate churches. We wanted to be at the same church, and we knew that very few churches would hire a female male, or actually female period. In fact, when I was at Meridian and I would go to all the convention meetings or whatever, I was always the only female there. And when you should see some of the faces on those guys when I would say that I was a youth minister at Midway Baptist Church. I just got some of the strangest looks. But anyway, so somehow you found that job at Hillcrest, right?
Yeah, so how I ended up in the ministry period was, when I was in the youth group, I had two guys specifically that influenced my life. One was Stephen Wright, who has since passed, and Andy Pittman, and both of them were pretty influential in my life. And that was a time in my life when they kind of helped me just through living life as a teenager and doing stupid stuff that I did as a teenager. But then, your position helped me dabble in the fact that, these kids did need honest. I mean, there were a few times we did stupid stuff like blow up corn, but I mean, we did have some good talks and good times, and so that's kind of what led me into it. And then, so what was awesome is I was at a small country church, and at the time, I was struggling with what I wanted to do for a living, and I had one preacher, I'm not going to say which one, but there was at one church in Meridian, the preacher said, look, if you're going to go in the ministry, you go all the way full throttle or don't do it at all. And I had my preacher at the time at the little church I was at, he was saying,
he was bivocational.
He was bivocational, and he said, what do you love to do? And I said, well, I love art, I love that kind of stuff, but I don't know if I can make a living doing that. And he was like, look, take it from a bivocational preacher he was a bivocational preacher. He preached on Sundays and Wednesdays, and he did construction work on, Monday through Saturday. And not that there's anything wrong with construction work if that's what you love to do. But he said, I don't love doing that. It's just, that's what I can do because he said, I went full throttle with this, and I got my degree in ministry, and it just hasn't worked out for me to be full time. And so I had one important person in my life telling me, look, if you're going to go all the way or don't do it at all. And this guy was saying, look, you pick something else that you love in case ministry isn't your full-time calling. And I'm so glad I did that because, at the time I wanted your dad, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but your dad was really telling me, like, you're good at art. You need to do something with art. I had this guy telling me, ministry is great and you're going to love it and you're going to be good at it, but don't, like, if you have another passion, pursue that too. And I'm so glad I did. So that's how we ended up in Jackson, because I had two schools I was applying for. One was the college we were going to, William Carey. They also had a campus on the coast. They were 3 hours away, and so I was trying to get into that school. But at the time, her dad was having some issues. So Mississippi College, which was another kind of, Christian college, that was in Jackson. So I ended up going to that school to get my degree in graphic design. But that's how we ended up there. And then so, my mom, which at the time she was working for a church, and so she helped me kind of get on with Hillcrest, and I met some really good folks at Hillcrest. That was the only full-time position I've ever had in the ministry, was Hillcrest, and I was there probably 2 years, and then I went on to minister a couple of other churches, and me and Heather were talking about this the other day, and the last church I was a youth minister at was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I still talk to some of those kids there, Tyler Hodges and his wife. We still keep up with him, and a couple of others. But I was telling Heather, I said, what's funny about that is that was probably 15 years after we were, I was probably 35 or around that time. So 15 years since we started like in the ministry. And at the time I told her, I said, I was a full-time video guy, graphic design guy. And I said, I just feel like God has more for me to do. And so I did it, and, but after I left that church, and I said, I can fully 100%, like, say without a shadow of a doubt, I'm done. Ministry is a great thing, and I enjoyed every second of it, but I'm
I
done.
think too, though, most of the churches we were part of were good experiences. Like Midway, I loved Midway and left on good terms, but I think there were a few in there, and I'm not going to mention names, that we really saw. I mean, it challenged me on a spiritual level because, you know, growing up Southern Baptist, the church was the end all be all. Like that was, sometimes people would put church before God. And, you know, we've talked about this before. I was raised with a lightning bolt God where, you know, there was no grace. It was, you better behave and you don't have sex before marriage and you don't do this. You know, it was very much a legalistic kind of upbringing in the church that we grew up in. And so I did a little bit of that when I was a youth minister, but somewhere along the way, I don't know, I don't even remember if it was an experience or just I don't know, but over the last 30 years or so, it's like God's shown me his mercy and his grace. And at first I was like, no, that's not right. Like I can't just know that knowing God's grace and mercy is enough. I have to do this, this, and this. An example is growing up, I was always taught, we had those little pink envelopes and there were check marks. So even if you didn't put money in the envelope, you needed to check mark so they would know. So one was like a present for Sunday school, worship attendance, tithing, read your Bible every day this week. And there was something else. And like the idea was if you couldn't check all the check boxes, then you weren't a good Christian. And so hardly any week could I ever check all the boxes because, you know, if it was a week where I read my Bible every day, maybe I wasn't tithing that week, or maybe we didn't make it to Sunday school or whatever. And so I got to where I hated filling out the little pink envelopes every Sunday because it made me feel like a subpar Christian. And then now I look back on that and I'm like, that's not at all what church should be about. And that, you know, that God loves us and we are made in his image and we don't have to do anything but have faith that Jesus is who he says he is and loves us and wants us to be a follower of him. And by that, it just means being kind to people and showing them God's love, whatever that looks like for you. But I don't know. It's been a weird transition for us, I think, over the last several years of just kind of stepping back and revisiting like what we know the Bible to be true.
My takeaway from this is, you know, it's not just Christianity, it's everything. I mean, you know, if you're in it and you're part of the club, you want everybody to act accordingly. That's part of the club. So, you know, and I'm just not built that way. And even when I was a youth minister, I wasn't built that way. I challenged the kids in the youth group to think differently and not just check the boxes like you're talking about. I feel like I challenge them to think differently, and even then, I mean, now I'm rough around the edges. If you know me, I'm going to say a cuss word. I'm going to get mad. I'm going to scream and holler and throw a fit. And, you know, in the past, I've been told that, you know, that's a sign of a terrible Christian if you're even Christian at all. And it used to bother me. Now I could care less because I know what I believe in. But, you know, it's just, I mean, this whole episode just came out because, you know, you and I were sitting back talking a couple weeks ago about how we've just evolved or grown from where we were to where we are now. And, you know, I do give credit to where we were and what, you know, how we were raised and all that as to what got us where we are. But, you know, I just feel like there's more to it than, you know, just the simplicity of checking these boxes and, you know, being done with it. But
so for some of you that may not know, and I mean, obviously, I don't know, you may not even care, but where Bo and I are, I feel like right now in our lives is, we have stopped going to church. Gasp. I know there's some people gasping at that. But it's not that we hate God or we hate religion or we hate anything. It's just we're at a place in our lives where we want to step back and learn for ourselves, spend some time. You know, I feel like our mission field has changed a little bit. And interestingly enough, I feel like yours has kind of become the bourbon guys that you meet and talk to and stuff. And I think that you've opened a door for some people to understand that, hey, you can be a Christian and drink bourbon. And then for me, of course, I feel like my mission field is the hospital. I mean, gosh, every day I meet people in the worst day of their life. And the fact that I'm able to, I mean, I had a patient the other day tell me that they've never been so sick and laughed so much because I was making, you know, not inappropriately, but just, you know, trying to make them feel better. And every patient I interact with, I try to be as nice as I can to them. And so I feel like maybe that's my mission field is the hospital. But, and I don't, like, if you have a church that you're a part of and you absolutely love, that's amazing. I mean, I think if you need that, I personally don't like to be around people.
Yeah, I think the older we get, the less people we like. So,
but my thing is, I don't like small talk. I have a few Christian friends that when I get stumped on something, or if I have a question about the Bible, I even still talk to a few of my old pastor friends that I trust to reach out to and say, hey, I read this today. I don't fully understand. What do you think it means? And they can tell me, but I don't need the, you know, dinner on the grounds and the small talk. And I have a few people in my life that I know when things get really bad and I need to reach out to them, that they'll be there for me. But, so I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think there will be a day where I do get back involved in a church when I find one that I really like. It won't be a big church because I'm not a big church girl. But I just think it's important for you to find, like, the verse in the Bible that says, you know, work out your own salvation. I can't tell you how to live your life as a Christian, and I think we can encourage each other on and in love when you are with somebody that you know is doing something wrong, if you have that relationship with them, which Facebook is not that place. And Bo and I talk about that all the time, that I'm not going to win anybody over for the Lord by posting something on Facebook. So if you're my friend on Facebook, you'll notice that I usually just do memes, funny memes, pictures, and things that our families are up to. But I don't know. I guess I'm rambling.
And I just do bourbon and sometimes political stuff until I feel bad about it, and I take it down.
We don't do political.
Go back to bourbon.
I just want to love people and be kind, and know that the reason I am able to love people and be kind is because of what Jesus has done for me, and not just by dying on the cross for my sins, but also all the things I look back in my life at places. And, you know, even our married life, there were times that we didn't have two quarters to rub together, and somehow God allowed us to keep pushing through. And, you know, we didn't know where the next house note was going to come from, or the next car note was, how it was going to be paid. And God always found a way to allow that to happen. And so, I mean, I really do. I know that I wouldn't be here where I am today without his blessings and his mercies. And now I'm just thankful to him that I finally learned how to rest in his grace.
There you have it.
What are we going to talk about next week?
So next week, we're going to take a break from our past and our story, and we're going to talk about where we are actually this week.
Cows?
Yeah, so, and just a side note, you probably heard a bunch of, like, four-wheel drive trucks and cars on blocks or whatever. Like,
Can you hear a car on blocks?
No, maybe not. But we're in a small town in Kentucky, and we're actually in the parking lot of the IGA doing this podcast, so all these trucks and cars and
I can't wait to tell y'all about where we're staying.
Yeah. So next week we're going to talk about our experience this weekend and how cool it was and all that stuff. So we'll take a break from all this and do some like live stuff, like not live stuff, but stuff that's
light stuff.
Stuff that we're doing nowadays instead of 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So all right, until next time.
Recent stuff.
Recent. Yeah, that's a good word. Recent.
Y'all have a great week.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode of Loving Our 25 to Life. Aww. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found something to take with you on your own journey.
Remember, love is an adventure. Sometimes it's wild, sometimes it's calm, but it's always worth it.
Yes!
If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who might need a little inspiration.
And don't forget to follow along for more episodes and vlogs documenting our travels, life lessons, and hopefully plenty of laughs.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep loving life because it is the greatest adventure of all. Bye for now.